Recording. All right, gang. My name is Bill Kaiser. I want to officially welcome you to today's webinar, Leveraging Your Culture to Win the Talent Competition. I know you've got busy days and this is getting to be a busy time of the year. So I appreciate you taking the time and I hope you find value in the next 60 minutes that we have together. This stuff is near and dear to my heart. Some of you have heard me speak before. I've been with CultureWise for 6 years now, but my journey began way back when the founder and I were partners in an insurance firm. And that's where we became more intentional with our culture. And boy, did it make a huge difference in all of our lives. So I'm excited always to share that story, but more importantly, see if I can provide any assistance to you all in being more intentional with your culture, especially with the challenges that we're facing today. So originally, just a side note, originally we had the title, we used the phrase, to win the war for talent for this webinar, which seems to be a very trending phase. However, today, as we celebrate our veterans and families of our veterans, I didn't think it was appropriate to use that phrase. So this is a reminder for me to a big shout out to any of you on this call that are veterans or families of veterans, to thank you for the service and sacrifices that you all have made in a day that just make sure you reach out to those that you know that served on behalf of our freedom. So thank you to all of you for those countless sacrifices and service to our country. Quick summary before we get into things. I want to set the stage. Some of you have heard pieces of this presentation, but I want to share again with all of you kind of our philosophy, if you will, the foundation of our thinking. And before I get into that, if you have chat questions, throw them in the chat box. My teammate, Tyler Howard, is behind the curtain looking at that stuff. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to try to squeeze in some time to answer some questions. If not, I will respond to those after the fact. So feel free to throw into the chat any questions that you may have regarding today's topic or anything. Philadelphia Eagles football, if you want to throw that at me, feel free. So we'll keep things moving here. And again, if you have any needs, throw it into the chat box and Tyler will attend to that as well. So our philosophy for today, or a philosophy for the foundation of our thinking that sets the stage for everything that we do. We believe, and I'm a big proponent of this, that there's no greater single lever any of us can pull or use in our organizations. If we want to improve our organization, I don't think there's any greater lever we can pull than to improve our culture. And we as leaders, and you've heard me say this before, if you've been on a call before, we as leaders have to be much more intentional and systematic and process oriented with our culture plans as we are with our sales and marketing plans, our technology plans, our HR, admin, you name it, strategic plans. A lot of us are putting together our strategic plans for next year. We have to bring that same discipline into our culture plan. And I believe that most leaders and most of you on this call, you're on a culture call, you believe in culture, you understand its importance. But I think, and what I've noticed, and I speak to a lot of CEOs around the country, most of us agree with that, but we just don't know what to do to move the needle beyond some conventional wisdom stuff that really doesn't move the needle, and it hasn't moved the needle. So today, I'm going to offer you a blueprint, if you will, and some ideas on how to leverage your culture as the distinct competitive advantage that it is, and specifically focus on leveraging culture to win the talent competition, which is as tough as it's been, and I think it will continue to be so for quite some time. You can't open up a paper without hearing stuff about the Great Resignation or the fact that no one's going to work, so on and so forth. There are three main points I'm going to want you to walk away with today. We'll talk about those at the end, but hopefully at the end of the 60 minutes, you're going to have those three ideas locked into your brain, two of which you may have heard before, but the third one is focusing specifically on leveraging culture to get the right people in our doors. So let's get into it. It's a poor graphic. I apologize for the poor graphic, but it just paints, is this us? I think it is. Does it feel like you're fishing in empty waters? There may be one fish out there, but look at all the hooks trying to attract that. That's the scary reality of today. The numbers are against us, gang. I wish I could recommend in this webinar, here, go flip this switch, and all of a sudden the talent pool grows and you have a lot more fish in the pond to hopefully entice to your hook. But I can't. And that's the elephant in the room and the reality that we live in. But what can we control, right? We always want to control what we can control. We need to make sure that the few that are out there, that they are compelled to choose us, that they find us. Sometimes we talk about how hard it is to find people. We have to make sure that people can find us, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I don't know about you. I'm sitting here in my house in Medford, New Jersey, southern New Jersey, about 35 minutes east of Philadelphia. Nice community. And I know that whether it's a restaurant, a doctor's office, a pharmacy, landscape contractors, the pool company, you name it, everybody in this town has help wanted signs up. Every CEO that I speak to, I was in Las Vegas yesterday speaking at a convention of a lot of distribution companies. They can't find people, right? Where is everybody going? I think a lot of people, I have a buddy that claims that they're all going to Amazon, but every business in town is looking for help. And I think that, again, I don't know what the answer is to all of a sudden increase the size of that pool, but I know there are things that we can do, and culture is the lever that we can pull to make sure that we are the employer of choice in these tough times. Whoop. It's a different ballgame right now. I love this quote. Recruitment is no longer a question of where organizations find talent, but how and why people find organizations. We don't just hang a sign and they come flowing in the doors right now, gang, right? People are hanging signs and they're still not getting people through the doors. Here's the important piece that we can't lose sight of. Times have changed. The hunters have become the hunted. You're not just out there picking people. People are picking you. They're choosing whether they want to work for you or not. And they have the leverage in many instances, right? So let's look at the landscape and do a flyover of what's really going on out there, right? I need to muck it up before we can talk about what we're going to do about it. Competition for good employees is fierce. The percentage of SMB is small, mid-sized businesses who plan to increase headcount in 2021, 64% of them. That was up from 55% in 2020. And guess what? That number is growing for 2022. So the pond, there are more people, there are more hooks in the water, gang. Everyone, and what I hear, and I'm actually encouraged by this, I'm excited to hear that businesses, speaking to a lot of leaders yesterday, business is booming. Yeah, they have a tough time with finding people to support the growth. Yes, they have a tough time getting supply to get to their customers, but there's demand out there, and there's demand for employees, and that's a good sign for all of us. We need more than just a warm body out there. In the Gallup poll in 2021, American State of the American Workplace, gang, we need people that are engaged. We need people that want to be where we are, where we need them to be. And the scary part about the fact that you've got people that are disengaged or unengaged working for you potentially now, we're paying them the same. And just know, and this has been an issue back in my insurance days. My history goes back, a long way into the insurance industry where we began our journey with culture. And I remember in about 2011, it was the Gallup poll that came out and told us at the time that 7 out of 10 of our employees were disengaged or unengaged. That number's now 8 out of 10. It hasn't improved. So something's not working with respect to doing something in our organizations to keep people happy, engaged, morale lifted, unpacking their bags when they walk through your doors. That's the environment that we have to create. It's not easy, but we can do it. Guess what? Why do people choose their job? We talk about this often, that people don't necessarily leave the paycheck. People leave your company because of some other people, because of the relationship with managers, because of the environment that they work in. Pay's important. You got to be there. I'm not saying, oh yeah, you can just pay, minimum wage. No, I'm not saying that. The bottom line though is there's why. Why is someone there? Percentage of employees who say their sense of purpose is defined by what they do for a living, 70%. That was a 2021 McKinsey study. 70%. Okay. It's important. Purpose is important. It's not just the pay. And yet, percentage of frontline managers and employees who disagreed that they were living their purpose at work were half. When asked if they were living their purpose at work, 85% of upper management agreed that they were, but only 15% of the frontline managers and the frontline employees agreed that they were living their purpose through work. 50% of frontline managers and frontline employees strongly disagreed. There's a massive disconnect between maybe what we think our employees are feeling and what our employees are feeling and what's actually happening. So again, it's kind of a murky state of the union, if you will. How do job applicants, how do people looking for work in your space? And maybe some of you are recruiting not just in your own backyard now because of the remote workforce situations. I did that in a webinar a few weeks back. Your pool has expanded and covers, you may hire someone from Denver if you have an office in Philadelphia, whatever the case may be. But it's important, just as what does a customer think when they view you or your website? What does an employee, a potential future employee, what feel do they get when they look at you? What do you look like to job seekers? What do you stand for? Do you just throw out there on your website, or you just lead with what you pay per hour? Yes, that sometimes you have to get price in the mix, but are you going to win the battle in the price game? No, everyone else can copy that. That's a tough place to win if you're going toe to toe with your competition just on price. I realize in some situations that is more kind of at the forefront than others, but what do you stand for? How do you help your staff? How do you help people connect to their passions, to what they want to do, to creating a place that they want to unpack their bags? How do you give them that sense of purpose in the workplace? How do your team members communicate with each other and collaborate and relate to each other? They're the kind of things that people are concerned with. I don't want to just work for work's sake. I want to be part of something special. Are you helping your employees to grow, to expand, to be lifelong learners, giving them a path and setting expectations that you expect that? That's what we want. We want to be part of something special. The answers to all of those questions should be rooted in your culture. That's what your culture is. How you all communicate and collaborate, so on and so forth. The environment that you've created in your organization, it needs to be crystal clear when people look you up. And we're going to talk about that. Sometimes our websites are great for selling our product and why they should choose us to buy from us. Are your websites addressing enough of why someone should choose to unpack their bags and come to you? Your greatest, most sustainable differentiator is your culture. Not just in terms of why the customers are buying from you, but why people should be lining up at your door to come work for you. What are you offering? What are you, besides the paycheck? Even more money isn't sustainable. You can't just keep paying more and more and more. Benefit packages, all that stuff. I think they're givens and tickets to the ballgame, but what's the environment that you're creating? What are you doing to make this place unlike anything that I'm comparing it to in my job search? What can't be copied is how it feels to work for you. What can't be copied is what your people say when others ask about your company. That's your culture. We spend a lot of time working on the resume and the requirements and the skill building, so on and so forth. Are we spending enough time in creating that and painting the picture that we want job applicants to, how we want them to view us? Hand them the prescription lenses that says and gives people a great feel about your organization. That's what your culture is. So let's get into a little bit of the how-tos, and we're going to roll through some of this. Think about what I want to talk about today is somewhat of a blueprint to how to build a culture operating system. Think about it that way. Some of you may be EOS disciples on this call. Think about what we're talking about and what there needs to be. And when I said we have to bring more intention and systematization, and we have to have a process for our culture plans, just like we do our sales plans and our technology plans, so on and so forth. Think of this 8-step framework as your the foundation for being more intentional and the process for developing that culture operating system. We're only going to focus. These are the 3 ideas I want to focus on today. I'm going to touch on these 3 steps. This is how you differentiate yourself via your culture. Steps 1, we're going to define your culture with great clarity. There's many on this call that have heard this message before. This is a critical step. You have to define the behaviors. We as leaders, it's our job to define the behaviors that are fundamental. You'll hear me use the word fundamental in replace of behaviors that are fundamental to our success. That's how our culture is defined, by those behaviors. 2, we've got to set up some way to teach and coach and reinforce those behaviors over and over and over again. We have to create rituals around the practice of those behaviors so that it actually sinks in. We'll talk about that in greater depth. And 3, step 3 in our framework is we have to find people that fit our culture. So first and foremost, why I'm going over 1 and 2 today as well, before we get into step 3, is, isn't it a lot easier to find people that fit your culture if you've defined it with great clarity? A huge step in the process. And again, when we're talking selection, gang, I'm not just talking about you selecting them, but remember it's shifted a bit, that you better be the ones that they select. Here we go. What do I mean by defining your culture in terms of behaviors? Clear behaviors. Most of you on this call, I would imagine, have values that are stated. Perhaps they've been passed down from generation to generation. Your family business. I'm not arguing with these, nor am I poking a hole in. They're wonderful virtues. Look at this list on here: integrity, quality, respect, innovation. Here's the challenge in translating that into something that's going to attract someone. I think they're a little buzzwordy. They're too vague. Everyone, integrity, how do you define it? Who doesn't promote quality in their organization, or innovation, or respect, or so on and so forth? I think there's a vagueness to the values. And this is what typically, if you Googled how to improve your culture, get your vision, mission right, and spend time on clearly articulating 5 to 7 core values. That's not enough to move the needle, gang. And that's one of the reasons why the needle hasn't moved with culture in our organizations or engagement in our companies, because we're focusing on the wrong syllable, as they say. Wonderful virtues. I'm not kicking them to the curb, but we got to take a deeper dive. So what do we say when we take a deeper dive? You've got to define your culture by these behaviors. And you'll notice on this list, they are action-oriented, they are instructional, they are verb-like. We've removed the gray area out of what does integrity mean? In my word, it means treat everyone with dignity and respect. It means to admit to your mistakes. It means to honor your commitments. There's lots of different behaviors that add up to acting with integrity. But honor commitments, practice blameless problem solving, be a fanatic about response time, celebrate success, listen to understand, speak straight, do the right thing always, follow up everything. The list goes on for quite some, but those behaviors are action oriented, and they tell someone, and we all need this, exactly what's expected of them. So again, if we're going to hire people to fit our culture, we have to go through the process of defining clearly how we want people to act and behave in our organization. And that's not something that's going to turn people off. That's going to attract people, because everyone wants to be part of an environment that's this inclusive and that honors commitments and rewards the good things that we do day in and day out. So Ixnay on the left, green check on the right. We've got to define our culture more clearly than we have in the past. Hopefully that makes some sense. Just an example. I wanted to, it's not just coming up with a title. And again, a lot of us that have those values, maybe they are plastered around the walls of your business. Maybe they find their way into performance reviews. Maybe they're discussed in the interview process. Some of us may have values that show up on page 4 of the new hire packet, and that's it. They're never referred to. It's just crossed that off the list. I'm not accusing anybody on this call of working that way, but I do think that sometimes we make the mistake of just, mailing it in, so to speak. And this is too important. So I want to give you a little deeper dive on what I mean by clarity around these behaviors. You're going to identify behaviors, and it's going to be the title. This particular example is one of our fundamentals, and a lot of our clients have something very similar to this. Their wording may be a bit different, but the title of the behavior that we're looking for, that we want to teach and coach, is to practice blameless problem solving. You'll notice that at the beginning of each sentence, apply your creativity, identify lessons, get smarter, learn from are all instructions. It's very clear what we mean. In teaching this fundamental, because teaching and coaching is part of the 8-step framework we're not touching on today. And by the way, yes, you will get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation along with the recording of the webinar. I saw that just pop up. we're providing coaching opportunity. This gives me a curriculum to teach and coach from. So if I'm talking to a group of people, or if I'm rolling this out in front of a client, in front of their employees, and we're talking about blameless problem solving, I talk about what's the ramifications? What's the residue of people going around and pointing the finger of blame when someone makes a mistake in our organization? We have a lot of us on here that have a core value of innovation. You want to really, erode innovation, then you point the finger of blame at people when they make mistakes or come up with ideas that maybe aren't so hot today. No, not in our organization. We attack problems. We don't attack people. That if we're not making mistakes in our company, I think we're soft and we're not going to improve. We're not keeping up with what's going on out there. We're not trying to innovate. We're going to make mistakes, but we're the kind of organization that knows how to handle those mistakes, that we isolate the problem, we fix the problem, we step back, realize what went wrong, we learn from it, we teach others about what we've learned, and we move on and we're better for it. But that's how, when you create the clarity around a specific behavior, we drill down that impacts and that changes the way people approach themselves or approach situations in the future. And that's what behavior change is all about. So I just wanted to take a deeper dive. We'll talk a little bit more about that later as to potential follow-up that I'd be more than willing to do with anybody that's interested. The second step of that process, the wheel, if you will, framework, is to ritualize the practice of your behaviors. And two examples of rituals: the national anthem is played before every sporting event in our country. Not sometimes, not just when the commercials end on time. No, that's a ritual. It goes, but we don't think about it. It's just, we know that we, whatever we do for the national anthem, but we know the national anthem is going to be played before the game. None of us debated this morning whether we were going to brush our teeth or not, I hope. I know there's a guy, Bruce, on the call that probably debated it and does it every other day, but Bruce, getting back at you for my haircut comment. But we don't think about it. And that's the power of rituals. The rituals make things stick. There was an article in the Harvard Business Review, I quote this all the time, in 2016. The article was "Why Leadership Training Fails." And the article pointed out that in the US, companies spend about $60 billion a year on training initiatives. Wow, it's a lot of money. We want to improve. It makes sense. The article pointed out that the majority of that money was a waste. And it's not because of the deficiencies of our employees. It's because of us as leaders that don't put the process in place. We don't systematize. We don't allow or put the rebar in the concrete, make the moves to allow these great ideas to stick. We decide we want to hire good people, but we don't have a system for that. We want people that are cultural fits, not just that check the boxes on the resume, but we haven't defined our culture. And if there are 6 hiring managers or 2 hiring managers in our company, they may be looking for different things from different people. And it's that inconsistency that breeds not the success we're looking for, or sustained success that we're looking for. So we've got to set ourselves up in a system and a process. Rituals allow that to happen. We're going to talk about what does that look like briefly. By the way, when you're developing your list of fundamentals, when you're developing those behaviors in step 1 that define the clarity, or clearly define what your culture is all about and how you expect people to act and behave, you're going to come up with a hearty list. Don't be fearful of the number. It's one of my hints to you. Whatever your number is, because the idea behind the concept of when we talk about practice and ritualizing, you're going to focus on one of these behaviors a week for the rest of your careers. Focus, and I'll talk about what that focus is. So don't get hung up in the number when you do brainstorming, and I'll talk more about that later. But don't get caught up in the number of these fundamentals. But when you look at some of these, you realize that it's stuff you're doing already. But I always say that the world-class organizations, they do the ordinary stuff, which is this list of behaviors, but they do it with extraordinary consistency. That's where rituals come to play. That rituals separate the fact that you're doing something with that art on the wall, the fact that you're doing something with those, you're turning those the words into action, so to speak, or the art into action. That's what separates the wannabe companies from the elite companies and those that outpace. And the reason that I choose to work for you versus the others that you're competing with, and that's why I choose to write you a check for your product or service versus the others. There's a compelling reason for me to be there. This all adds up to that. So let's talk about some examples of rituals before we get into some more specifics on selecting to a cultural fit. Your rituals look like you're going to focus on one of those fundamentals every week for the rest of your life. Okay, how are we focusing on that? Well, the first ritual, if you will, is a weekly insight. So we've had over 400 clients, and I would say that 99% of them, their ritual regarding the fundamental of the week, step one is the weekly insight, where the CEO for the first 20, let's say you have 25 fundamentals. For the first 25 weeks, that CEO is sending an email out to all employees with his or her thoughts, insights on what it means to honor commitments, what it means to treat everyone with dignity and respect, what it means to honor commitments, do the right thing always, get clear on expectations, celebrate success, have fun, you name it. We're teaching, we're coaching, and we're leading. The weekly insight. What happens after the first 25 weeks? You give up and you go on to the leader's next brilliant idea or the latest book he read. No, or she read. No, you go back and you rinse and repeat. We're doing this over and over and over again. I got good at brushing my teeth probably at the age of 6. I'm still doing it. I know that's cheesy and simple, but that's how we have to get in terms of our practice for this stuff to sink in. I'm not saying it's easy necessarily to be an extraordinary company. Nothing I'm sharing with you today is going to turn your organization upside down. It's the consistency that really means something. So that's an example of one thing you can do to bring light and attention and a spotlight on these important behaviors. Your weekly insight for your fundamental of the week. You all have meetings currently in your organizations. It could be tool talk, stretch time, sales meeting, ops meeting, whatever meetings you have currently. We're just asking you to add one thing to that list and talk about your fundamental of the week at the beginning of the meeting. And I'm not talking 10 to 20 minutes conversation. I'm talking a 3-minute conversation where we just honor it, acknowledge what our fundamental of the week is. So if I'm running that sales meeting and I say, hey, Bruce, our fundamental this week, we saw David's comments earlier in his email to all of us, talking about honoring commitments and how important it is for us to do what we say we were going to do when we said we were going to do it. Bruce, what do you think the downside, this is rhetorical, so you don't have to answer, Bruce, but what do you think the downside or the perception, if we're not good at honoring commitments, how does that impact us on the sales side? How does that impact us on the customer service side? We're briefly discussing our fundamental, how it applies in that particular situation, in that particular department, company, whatever the case may be. But we put that to the first agenda item. Now, if you have a prospect coming into your business, it's your meeting and your agenda, you do this because you're special and you're different. If it's a customer, you do it. If it's your meeting, this is how we roll. We're trying to establish new habits. We do things that most companies don't. That's why you should choose to work here. That's why you should choose to buy from us. It's a new habit that really separates you from everybody else. The first agenda item, or the 3 or more rule. Back in our insurance days, anytime there were 3 or more of us in a meeting, not if we bumped into each other in the lunchroom, but 3 or more of us in a meeting, we started that meeting with a quick reflection of our fundamental of the week. A shout out to just embrace technology. There's more ways that you can get these ideas, these insights out to everybody in your organization. Sometimes you have workers that aren't sitting in front of a computer to get an email. Well, Teams, Google Hangouts, Slack, we have an app that helped us deliver a massive amount of contact to our customers, our clients, and their employees via a smartphone that pretty much everybody has. But think and embrace how to use technology. Back in my insurance days, I was a sales leader. When we sold our company in 2008 to Arthur J. Gallagher, I became part of a larger leadership team across a region. I was out getting some sales training from Gallagher, all the sales leaders they brought into Chicago, Illinois. They trained us for 3 days, water hose, treatment in terms of a new sales technology and terminology. We got our overdose of sales language from Richardson sales training, but for the next 10 weeks, I received an email each week quizzing me on what I had learned. I thought that was great follow-up. We do that via the app for our customers. If you have a chance to put that into play, what a great way to reinforce what you're trying to teach each week with your fundamental of the week. It gets people engaged. It lets people know this isn't going away and it's not a flavor of the month, gang. It's not the shiny new toy until we read another great management book. We are here to get better. Our job as leaders and coaches in our organizations is to help not only the company be better tomorrow than it is today, and the only way that happens is we help our people get better tomorrow than they are today. Those fundamentals that you scratch out and you have a card of those fundamentals and you have them all listed, that's a great teaching and coaching and recruiting platform. That's the list that you go shopping with when you're looking for superior talent. You know what behaviors drive success in your organization. When I'm teaching folks in my organization what to do, those fundamentals allow me to teach better because I have the curriculum right there on my app or on my card or whatever the case may be. That's why we go to those lengths. Because if we're going to change behavior and we're going to move the needle, then practice makes perfect. And who likes practice? Practice, wow. To internalize, internalization requires repetition. Repetition requires practice. Practice is tough. You have to ritualize the practice to make sure it gets done. I didn't think about brushing my teeth, the national anthem, prayer before dinner, synagogue Saturday, church service, whatever those rituals are. I go to the gym, I start every day with 10, whatever that's how our practice and our fundamentals have to be, because then people start noticing. And we'll talk about that now. So step 3, 1, we talked about, quick review. 1 was define with great clarity the behaviors that define your culture, that are fundamental to your success. 2, set up an internal methodology to teach, coach, and reinforce that over and over and over again. And you got to do that with rituals. You have to have specific events that systematically teach, not just episodically teach when things happen, but over and over and over again to reinforce the message. 3, we have to attract your culture. You have to attract people to your culture. You have to attract people that fit with your culture. I'm talking behavioral fits here. Attracting and retaining and selecting the right people. I put the Ritz-Carlton and Chick-fil-A up for a couple of reasons. 1, the Ritz-Carlton is where we got our ideas from back in 2004. And I think about the Ritz-Carlton that, you know, that's a tough business. And I'm sure, you know, to be in all the different, you're serving others. And they do a wonderful job of it. I mean, the Ritz-Carlton is the Ritz-Carlton. They have the reputation. They've earned it. They're the first 2-time winner of the Malcolm Baldrige Award. They are the gold standard for performance excellence. And they do define behaviors clearly. And everyone carries a card around in their organization with their 20 basics, they call them. And they hire to that culture based upon, we need people that you can't teach heart to, that come here wanting to serve others, wanting to figure out what it is that's going to make you, Veronica, pleased with your experience here. The Ritz-Carlton has, you know, 40 countries and, you know, 40,000 employees, hundreds of locations, and they attract the people that can deliver on their credo, where they serve ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. So how do they go about doing that? Chick-fil-A, I mean, come on, fast food. It's not necessarily the most attractive industry to get entry-level employees. You go to Chick-fil-A, I'm a big fan of Chick-fil-A. I travel a lot. It's chicken you can trust. But we all know when you say thank you at Chick-fil-A, they look at you in the eyes and they say, my pleasure. That doesn't mean they're great at service, but people that go there know what they're getting into. They know they're going to have Sundays off, I guess, but they also know that their job is to make this a pleasant, a legendary experience for those that come here. How do they do it in that industry? Couple things. 1 is they've created outstanding cultures at both of these places. There's no doubt about it. We're going to talk about each 4 of these. We have to leverage current employees as recruiters, and it goes beyond current employees as well. It goes to clients and vendor partners and everybody else, and I'll tell you a story there. We need to communicate your culture early and often. I see, even in our own clients, I see a void. When I go to a website, it's not meant to entice me as a job hunter, yet that's where we go. We're going to check out the website of this company. I want to learn about them. I'm interested. Maybe I want to join them. Well, you better give them a compelling reason real quick on the front side of that website as to why you're special, why you're different, and why they should show up at your place and unpack their bags. We'll talk about communicating a little bit better. We need to ask culture questions when interviewing. Our interviews have to be based around not just finding the skill set, but finding people that intrinsically behave the way we call out as the way we roll at our organization. We have to ask questions around those behaviors. And last but not least, we have to be disciplined in only hiring the people who fit your culture. That's not easy to do. Please, I'm going to caveat this. It's difficult, no doubt about it. But who wants it easy? So number 1, Leverage your current employees as recruiters. Hey, people talk. You hang out with your friends and neighbors. Oh, what do you do? How's work going? Tell me about your company. That's, word of mouth is going to be, just your greatest advertisement in a sense. What are your folks saying when they talk about your company? What are your clients saying when they talk about your company? What are your vendor partners? How do they reflect upon you? Way back when I started, I tell you about my history, and I didn't go into it deep today because of timing, but where we did everything I'm talking about at our insurance firm RSI. When I got the job at RSI, I had been referred to them by someone that I said no to in a job interview. A gentleman I'd met, he owned a local Dale Carnegie selling franchise, wanted me to come on to be a trainer and a salesperson for his organization. And the details just didn't work out. And I was interested, but not interested enough. And he says, hey, I've got an opportunity. You need to go talk to Larry Friedman at RSI. I spent 20 years in the insurance business. I became a partner in that organization. It was just a wonderful landing spot. I unpacked my bags then. And that wasn't an employee of RSI referring me there. It was someone that worked alongside of them. The power of people understanding what's special about you outside of your own employee base. I can't emphasize that enough. And that's why when I talk about rituals, that you have a client come into your building and it's your meeting, let them see the practices. Let them see how you train to be better and how they recognize that specialness that you bring to the table, because everyone is a referral source. You can't ignore that today, gang. You've got to find great people, and you have a lot of people looking for you, so to speak. So build a culture where people are loyal and enjoy working for you and with you so much that they're recommending you to others. Stock the pond. There's a line at the door. We never had an issue recruiting people at RSI. Granted, hiring was a little bit different then, but you know what? People were at our door. And our employees became selective as to, you didn't recommend that maybe that one buddy or girlfriend of yours or whomever that, they're fun to hang out with, but boy, they jump jobs all the time like a skipping rock across a flat body of water. They just, boom, they move on to the next. We weren't getting those friends referred to us because you want to protect, when you have something special, you want to protect it. So yes, you may want to consider an incentive for your employees to a referral bonus. Many of you on this call probably have that. You pay some of that upon hire, but I think you also want to leave a lot of that bonus for a certain point in time that recruit or that new employee has lasted. We want to incent great employees coming and staying, not just people coming in the door and applying initially. So keep that in mind. Leverage current employees, clients, vendor partners, people that know you, and make sure they know you. This is a little bit, communicate your culture early and often. I'm sharing with you the front banner of one of our clients, High Point. This is when you go to High Point's website, the big screen, I think the headline, I forget, front page, top of page, I'm not sure quite what they call it. You're going to get reference to their culture and their fundamentals on the front of the page. And that's what's special about this particular company. It's not just about product and price. You're selling yourselves here as well. So get it on your website, gang. Don't make me have to find it just in the contact us or looking for a job section. Be proud and focus on that on the website. When you click the button, you get right into the specifics. They have 33 fundamentals that define the High Point way. Here's their culture. Here's the stuff that matters most to them. Here's what's those that are interested in joining our company probably need to pay some attention to. It's all there front and center for people to find. So I think the message here is shout it from the rooftops, communicate loud and clear, hand out those cards when you define your culture with great clarity. Put your fundamentals on your website and then get these into your specific job descriptions as well. And it's not like, High Point is not hiring someone and going over 33 fundamentals with them in the interview process. But our recommendation and what a lot of our clients do is pick 3 to 5 of those that really pertain to that position and have specific questions regarding those behaviors. Speaking of asking those questions, ask culture questions. And there's an art to that. The quality of the answer is directly related to the quality of the question. So ask questions that pertain to the behaviors that you expect out of employees. Example, an account manager where customer service is important. So do you have a behavior like, maybe you have something like deliver legendary service, or you have a behavior, do what's best for the customer. Don't start that interview with a question. So do you believe in, legendary service for customers is important? Well, yeah, no kidding. Hello, McFly. I mean, again, the quality of the answer is directly related to the quality of the question. Talk to me about a time when you received extraordinary service. Give me an example when you felt you went above and beyond on behalf of a customer. What was their reaction? What did you do? That's the level we have to get to. And if you've articulated those behaviors very clearly, I know I sound like a broken record, it's a lot easier to come up with the great interview questions that mean something to that service person or salesperson, whatever. And you'll find them specifically. You'll create, we don't need 10, 20, but make them particular to the position. Nope. Only hire, this is where it takes, we have to be disciplined as leaders. And it's harder than ever right now that you got to only hire people that fit the culture. And I say with all due respect to the challenge that's out there, and I know we keep saying that, but I don't want to come off as callous, like, oh, it's real easy. We already know that there's not a whole lot of fish swimming in that pond. So it's easy to come off and be undisciplined relative to finding the fit. This isn't the old days where gym class where everyone gets picked. Your company is an exclusive group of people, and we need to be selective. I have a client, it's a bank outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. There's about 900 employees. And when I help them come up with their fundamentals, and I think that they happen to have the lowest number of all of our clients, they have 18 of them. And when I help them roll this out to their 900 employees, I think we did 27 rollout meetings to get in-person meetings for 2 hours to introduce everybody to the card and their 18 fundamentals. And at the end of every one of those rollout meetings, the CEO of the company would end the meeting saying, "Hey gang, we're excited to begin our practice of our fundamentals." And I realized that, some of this may not be for everyone in this organization. And then he said, which is a drop the mic killer line, he goes, "But you know what? Not everybody gets to work here." And I think that, and he said it in a way that was warm and it wasn't, coming off callous. And that's how we have to be, and the discipline we have to exhibit when it comes to hiring folks, that it's easy to check boxes off the resume. You've got to look for the cultural fit. As hard as it is, we need more than just someone that can fog up the mirror. And I understand how difficult it is. And sometimes we have to, maybe people are doubling up until we get that person in here. But I think you end up creating more pain with the bad hire than waiting for the right hire. And now there's a difference. Sometimes we make mistakes. There's a difference between getting fooled in the interview process and picking someone isn't right. And you may get fooled at times because people are clever and can be deceiving. There are wonderful actors and actresses out there. But picking someone because you need to fill a seat that boy, they just don't seem right, trust that gut, hold off. It's going to cost you more money in the long run. A great team requires great players, and picking someone that just isn't right is not getting you there. Do not lower your standards. Easier said than done. Again, I'm recognizing how difficult it is. We talk about good companies have good cultures by chance. The world-class companies have world-class cultures by design. You have to design and set yourself up to find the right people. You can't have an extraordinary company without an extraordinary culture. And you can't have an extraordinary culture without extraordinary people. So we have to be disciplined in our selection process. We have to identify what is critical and go find them. And doggone it, we got to shout it from the rooftops, because if there are few fish out there in that pond, then what I dangle on the end of my hook better be better than what every other hook has on it. And I think that, that's the power that you have in communication. That's the power you have in people talking about your organization with respect. And man, you got to go work at RSI, or man, you got to go work at so-and-so. That's what happens, that you build that momentum. And what an interesting, cool thing to happen when people find you rather than you always having to go out and find them. Control what you can control. The numbers will come. We have to be patient and disciplined. But to win the talent competition, I almost said that other line that I said I wasn't going to use. To win the talent competition, you have to have a compelling reason for someone to choose you over the ample opportunities they have to go elsewhere. So don't cut short on that opportunity. And I think culture is the foundation of all of that. You know, we talk about culture being at the heart of so many things, winning more business and improving communication, engagement, morale. It's your ticket to getting the right people and keeping the right people, which has never been more important, I think, for many of us. I'm soon to be 60, never more important than it is today. So let's not lose sight of that. I've left some time at the end of this for some questions, and I'm going to look through chat and hit a couple of them, anything that I see directed to me. So if you have a question that you want me to dig in deeper on or go back to a slide, please hit me up right now via chat. I want to go over a few other things here that I want to share with you that what you get. For being on this web, you're going to get a recording of this webinar. I think I said that earlier. I'm going to send you an article that speaks more specifically into the nuts and bolts of selecting to a cultural fit and leveraging your culture. Again, and the title of that article actually is refers to the war for talent. I'll send you a video as well. If some of these ideas make some sense, a video, again, just reminding you, go into a little bit more depth of some of the things we've covered in previous webinars, but kind of giving you an A to Z quickly on CultureWise that may make sense for you to share with others just to catch them up to where you are. If you're deciding to get further into the culture journey or culture initiative for next year, I certainly encourage you. Now's a great time. And I'm also throwing out there, that's a link that you'll be able to tap into. I also want to get deeper into, it's tough on these webinars to get into some of the nitty gritty. I'm more than happy, and this is not a sales ploy, please don't hear it that way, but a link to my calendar. I'd love to get into it with you. And well, let me show you what I would, just a 30-minute, doesn't even have to be 30 minutes. Plug yourself into my calendar. How do you develop a list of fundamentals in your organization? We talk about that. And I'm willing to give you a little bit more information and how-tos as to how would you go about developing a list of fundamentals. I'll write one with you. We'll talk about one of those behaviors that person you want to clone, and Sally, she's great because of what? Why is she clone worthy? And we'll write a fundamental. And I think that starts giving you a feel for one. It's a complex process, but the importance of it and how so much teaching and coaching and movement can be made if you had the foundation of that, if you're teaching or that was your platform. And 4 traps to avoid, which is mistakes sometimes people make with writing their fundamentals or trying to be more intentional with culture. So feel free to take advantage of that. I see a question, I'm going to read it here. I don't see how you link the culture has the desired effect of engaging the employees. So the residue, culture and engagement, let's quick, great question. Thanks, John. And we can go offline with this too. Culture and engagement are often talked about like peanut butter and jelly, right? They're lumped together, and I think it's important to define the difference between the two. So for culture and our purposes and how we define culture, and I think it's pretty simple. It's simply how it's the sum total in a sense. It's how people act and behave. It's how things work in our organization as the sum total of people acting and behaving. Engagement, on the other hand, and I think this is like not a chicken or the egg, this comes after the fact, but engagement is how people feel about the way things work around here. And I think engagement is, there's a lot of, years ago when Gallup came out with a poll, people rushed, when people said 7 out of 10 of your employees are either disengaged or unengaged, we freaked out. And we started having the water balloon tosses, the pizza parties, bring donuts in for everybody on Wednesdays. Friday, you can wear your holy jeans and flip-flops or bring your dog to work day, whatever. We did all those, and they're all wonderful things, right? We want to have a workplace that's fun. But I think what happened in terms of why the engagement scores didn't move, because there wasn't the tie to our culture. The culture is about creating that environment where we give people a chance to be heard. We encourage creativity and innovation in organization. We don't point the fingers of blame. We listen like champs. We expect people to contribute whether the idea is good or not, and that we were fixing the wrong problem at the time. And I think that when you have an environment, when you create the environment that allows people, I like being here. Maybe it's flexibility in the workforce. Yes, I'm paid appropriately, but I'm part of something special in that I'm really contributing. I know what's expected of me. I know I have a voice. I know that people listen. I know that there are egos that are put, checked at the door, that I have teammates, so on and so forth, that all of a sudden that starts driving, net promoter scores or engagement goes, it's very difficult, John, to correlate culture driving engagement with a metric. And that's one of the challenges with culture is like, how do we prove our ROI, so to speak? When we talk to our clients, in fact, somebody else had asked a question earlier about, how do you know this stuff is working? You see people enjoying themselves in the workplace. You see productivity increasing. You see efficiencies. You see more ideas coming from folks. You hear the language of your fundamentals, and it snowballs. I have clients that speak to another residue of great high-performing cultures is you see a drop in turnover, and that is something that I think is more tangible than a lot of the other things. Patrick Lencioni talks about biases that many leaders have in deploying a culture initiative in their organizations, and he speaks to a complexity, a quantification bias, a complexity bias. The quantification bias is, hey, if you're looking for someone to tell you that you're going to get 17-to-1 return on your investment with your culture initiative, you can't. It's just, you can't do that. You can certainly track engagement scores. You can certainly track turnover numbers. You can track profitability and stuff, but I can't take credit for that as a culture guy. I can't take all the credit for that. So anyway, I hope that touches on it a little bit. And I'd love to dive in deeper with you, John. So any other questions before we wrap up? I'm going to give you some, this is kind of slick. Again, many of us have unique challenges. We want to take a little bit of deeper dive. And in an hour, it's tough to kind of give you context and then dive in real deep. But my hope is that you walk away from this session today with, okay, I'm going to leverage. I need to define our culture more crystal clear like, and leverage that in the war. Excuse me, I just did it. My bad. In the to win the talent competition. My apologies, I slipped. We've got to leverage our culture. It is something special. Give me a reason to choose you. And when you start defining those behaviors, it's pretty evident how you can, that creates your marketing plan, if you will, your internal marketing plan. Here's how you get a hold of me. You can QR code this stuff. It worked. I tested earlier. You can plug yourself into my calendar. You can just set up an email to me. I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing from you. Give us feedback. We're trying to do a monthly webinar from here on out. We have one set up in December. More information coming to you, but talking about the challenge of holding people accountable to our cultures and the general thought of that there's a void in accountability that I'm seeing and speaking to a lot of leaders, and the challenge that many leaders have in their organizations. So that'll be in December. And I look forward to getting back with you then. If there are no other questions, I'm seeing some follow-up stuff, but nothing directed to a question here. I thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to give you 6 minutes, my gift to you, giving you some, oh wait, there's a Q&A. Let me just double check here. Slide deck, yes, will be available. We are thinking of hiring a full-time person who supports and promotes our culture. Your thoughts, and if you think a good idea, what type of person would you hire? Wow. So David, thank you for the question. I guess I have a couple of questions for you. And again, feel free to reach out. I'm Bill at CultureWise. We can talk more about this. But one is, I'd want to be real clear. Before I hired someone to be the flag waver for our culture, I would want to make sure that we know what the heck our culture is. How are you defining your culture? So that's first and foremost, is I would make sure, and defining your culture. Many people here are HR. There's some leaders on this call. It's a leadership function. It's the CEO is also the CCO, the Chief Culture Officer. So I think it's just as the leadership team and the CEO ultimately decides on what the vision and mission, and previously what the core values ultimately would be, same thing here in defining the culture. So I like the idea of having someone that is responsible for the ongoing attention to the corporate culture and keeping things lively and fun and entertaining and educational and developing content, so on and so forth. Love the idea. but I'd want to define what is the culture and work with, I don't know, David, if you're a leader, CEO of a company or part of leadership staff, whatever, I'd want to be clear about, here's the culture that we want in our organization. And now we have to go find people that fit it. So I'm going to find a fit for the person that's going to lead that charge. Another question from your customer that have adopted the CultureWise principle. What kind of impact have you seen on the organization in the first 12 months, 3 years, 5 years? Great question. So I think that we just came off, we had a culture summit, which more news on that. You'll see, November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th next year in Philly is our culture summit, a great place where a lot of our longtime clients, new clients, prospective clients come and we rub elbows and talk about culture. I think many of them, the first sign is the common language that they see. They start hearing people talking about, hey, whoop, time out. We're pointing the finger of blame here. Time out, we honor our commitments. It's the third meeting in a row you've been late to, David, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying in a punitive way, but there's a common language that happens to reveal itself pretty soon. As soon as you roll it out, you start hearing these, because these are concepts that they're not Wharton School of Business kind of terms, gang, right? This is stuff that we're used to, we've heard of our entire lives. We're just kind of packaging them and speaking about them more often in our company. So you're going to see common language. You're going to see, I have a client that their turnover rate dropped from 35% to 11%, and they will give just about full credit to their fundamentals and their practice of their fundamental system. So you're going to see turnover rates go down. You're going to see 3 to 5 years in the long haul. You're going to be, we have a client of Lyft company out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that speaks to the last 5 years of their existence where they've been practicing their fundamentals. And please don't hear this, this could come off as a purely sales comment, but they don't think it's an accident or by chance that they've had the best 5 years of their existence, long-time company, since they've adapted practicing the fundamentals and everyone's singing from the same song sheet. So turnover rates go down, engagement morale scores go up, our hiring efficiencies go up. So not only people aren't leaving us, but when we make offers, we used to track this number. If we made an offer to 10 people, 8 of them are joining us. You're going to see, you're winning the recruiting game. Guess what else happens? Your customers stay with you longer and you win more business. And I know as a sales guy, in a sense myself, our culture was the differentiator in our sales process. And when people asked me, Bill, why should we choose your insurance brokerage over all the other lookalikes and sound-alikes that have been in here pitching their wares as well? My answer would be, it's our people. And sometimes that can be a cheesy answer. Everybody says it, but can you prove it? What are you doing to make your people better? And I would pull out my card and I would show people, these are the behaviors that we practice, have been practicing week over week, year over year, to ensure that the experience you have with us, that we've worked on that, is better than any experience you're going to get with somebody else. Because responsiveness, listening, attention to detail, you name it, I could speak to specifics. And I think that you'll win more business over the long haul as well. But thank you, anonymous attendee, for asking that question. Okay, gang, anybody else? I appreciate your time and attention. I see there's a bunch on. Please reach out to me. Let me know how to improve these, how to make them more useful for you in the future, because we want to be more consistent with it. Whether you work with us or you do it on your own, you're better for it. Dive in, be intentional, make this the center point of everything you do, and you find out that there's a multiplier effect with your culture. Everything else seems to run a little bit better in your organization, no matter what the initiative. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And all my best for attending. Have yourselves a great rest of the day and look forward to the follow-up. Thank you.